Kia ora koutou. I'm doing another archaeological site tour, and today we're at Smugglers Bay Loop Track, or Te Whara Track. This area has been important to Māori since earliest arrivals, and as such there are loads and loads of sites around here. In fact, instead of seeing this as a cluster of discrete sites, it's better to see it as a wider archaeological landscape in which the sites are just little evidence points of the human occupation that occurred there. This area is significant to Ngāti Wai, Ngāti Kahu, Te Waiariki and Te Parawhau, as well as others descended from Ngai Tahuhu and Manaia. There are also probably a lot of unrecorded sites, and there are some that are obscured by things like stock trampling. Because of this, I'm going to stick to the ones identified in this report, which also has this handy map, and this later version of it which has a bit more detail. The first part of the track has pits, terraces and midden. In some places it looks like the midden has eroded out onto the track, and in others it was spread there by the bulldozer that made the track. I think right here, to me it looks like these are the terraces that are marked on that map. I might go up and have a look at them. As you can tell, it's highly modified, like I said, by the farming and also by having the walking track cut in. But if we go up here, if we look down at that one, that looks pretty clear to me. Would have been a great place to have a terrace. Terraces often had whare on them, not just houses for living in, but also for cooking, storage houses, things like that. This one would have had a really nice view out here, some good resources, fishing along the beach, collecting shellfish. So it looks like a lot of this material out here on the path has come out of this middenly looking bit here. Looks like we've got pipi primarily. This midden covers 170 metres squared, but only about 10 metres squared is exposed by the track. The hangi stones above were found there. Carpenters suggest that it was an intensive and or long-term occupation that was interrupted by a landslide that deposited a whole load of boulders on top of the midden. Walk in the rain. This is definitely very modified. Ooh, found a shelter. The rain's coming right in here. On the track before this rock, there was a site I didn't notice that was identified as an obsidian working area. Several obsidian flakes were found there, as well as some charcoal and one piece of shell. Looks like some more midden-y kind of stuff coming out here. We're on our way to the gun encampment. This midden's interesting because it seems it got spread during the construction of paths between the military buildings during their construction in 1942. So you can see a lot of these surfaces look like they might have been flattened out. And often terraces, because they're built usually on the side of a hill, they're kind of staggered like stairs. It's quite a poorly drained area there. I'm not sure how recent that is though. And there's also one there. It'd be interesting to collect pollen samples from there and see if there's any from Taro. So we're hiking up the side of this big hill because there's terraces up there somewhere that I want to show. But we found some more midden. They're quite big. Well, that one's not that big. Not the biggest, but looks like pipi. This is actually quite a good example of midden because it's pretty complete, a lot of the shells. So you can tell they're not just from the beach because they're not super weather worn. I mean, that one is a little bit. These ones have been exposed probably for a while, so they might be a little bit, but they look pretty close to the condition they would have been dumped here in. It looks like it might be eroding up from possibly up there. There's a lot of this fernery, this bracken going on here. This often pops up if a native forest has been burnt down. That was done by Europeans and Māori for agriculture and horticulture. So that down there is where we just came from. I'm trying to block the wind with my hands, but I don't know how well it's working. So we're up this big hill, down here. Here we go, here's some terraces. But down there, I think that's another one. This one's all scrumpled up. It's worth noting that the entire flat top of this hill could be a terrace, but it's pretty hard to tell with so much trampling. These upper slope terraces were identified as part of two different parts, and there's a third in the next part. I would assume most of this area had bush. There's native stuff here. All over back in the day. Since it's still pretty dense on this side, I don't know how well it's been surveyed because it would be quite hard to recognise stuff. You could use LiDAR though, but it would be harder to do a walking survey here obviously, so there might be extra sites here. The midden. This midden was similar to the others in the area, which were 95% pippy and dated to between the 1450s and the early 1600s. Off to the pa. This is the headland pa. Can't see a lot of stuff that you could see in the other one, but I'll try and find some records of it. A small group of pits and terraces was found here, which Nevin interpreted as a food storage area. It would have been well protected from raiding parties due to its location. The only way to get there was along the ridge we walked along. We did find this track right at the end of the headland leading down to the rocks. It doesn't look like it goes anywhere really. It goes out to this point, I think. Some evidence of humans. It keeps going. A little bit of steep bushwhacking. But the only way you can actually get up from the rocks is by climbing up using a ratchet strop that someone's hammered in. So it probably wasn't part of the pa. Here's what that headland pa area looked like from the beach, and next time I'll discuss the beach itself, including some pretty interesting animal bones. This is the final part of my Smugglers Bay Archaeology series, and this one is about the beach. You'll see here on the map that there are 4 midden sites. I'm just going to discuss Q07, 83 and 103, because they had the most information available, and I think they had the most interesting finds there as well. These sites have been surface collected since the 1800s, so I wouldn't bother trying to fossilize artifacts there. In 1981, Deverell and Te Wake investigated 103 and found several pieces of one-piece moor-bone fish hooks. One-piece fish hooks refers to when they're made out of a single piece of bone rather than several pieces, and this style is highly indicative of the earliest period of Māori settlement in Aotearoa. They also found tuatara and bird bones, including one from an extinct species, as well as fish bone and shellfish. This doctoral's eyeing me up. 83 contained shellfish, fish bone, seal and dog bone, a flake of chert from the onirahi sauce, and flakes of obsidian. 3 ovens, oven stones, a pit and a post hole were found here, which suggests it was occupied on more than a brief campsite basis. It might have been a seasonal occupation, for example. In the 1800s, an Austrian man named Andreas Reischek found stone adzes at Smugglers Bay. He also looted a whole load of other local sites, so I might do a separate video on him. This whole area was intensively occupied by Māori, and there are many more middens and other sites that I haven't talked about in these videos. More midden. Looks like it comes all the way along here. However, a lot of the ones nearby, particularly in Urquharts Bay, are now on private land, so it would be hard for me to do a video on them. But let me know if there's any other places you're interested in, particularly around the Taitokoro area.